Tabletops will start after the following messages.
Are you looking for something comfortable to wear and keep your brain warm while playing tabletop games? Daily Dose of Yarn makes handmade, customized beanies for all of your style and comfort needs. She can even help you with a custom beanie to represent your favorite character. Check out Daily Dose of Yarn on Instagram and Etsy to order your new favorite beanie today.
Slay the Stars, D&D actual play, cosmic fantasy, dark fairy tale, shenanigans! Listen in Tuesdays at noon Eastern Standard Time on any major streaming platform. SlayTheStars.com. Persomnia ad Astra.
At last, I have reached the tallest peak in all the world, where the wisest person lives. Finally, I'll get the answers I seek.
Welcome. I am the wisest person in the world. Ask me your question.
What is my purpose in life? What should I be doing to achieve pure happiness?
You must stream Game Master Monday.
Come again.
Game Master Monday, the bi-weekly podcast that plays a new one-shot in a new system in a new setting with a new cast every episode. Listening to their funny jokes and wild stories is the only path to happiness, my child.
Sick. I'm going to go home and binge the whole thing right now.
What a nice kid. Oh dear, he fell off the mountain. Now they'll never know how good Game Master Monday is.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Tabletopped. I am your host, Nick, and I am joined today with one of my, I don't know how to say, I've been looking forward to this podcast releasing before you guys released your first episode. I was sort of tracking you guys on Twitter. As somebody who is queer himself, I have a real big admiration for, a queer and women-led podcast. I am joined today by the actual play podcast you all should be listening to, the Rainbow Dice Club. Hello, everyone. How are you?
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Can we go around and just give a quick introduction of who you are, who you play in the actual play, and a little bit about how you got into TTRPGs?
Yes. Yeah. Who wants to go first?
Okay, start with Lex. We start with Lex always. It's Lex and then it's WASD.
Great. Excellent.
Yes. We have a marching
Amazing.
order.
Dusty's always last because they throw us off half the time. So my name is Lex. My pronouns are they, she. I am the DM for the Rainbow Dice Club, at least for this campaign. I have been playing TTRPGs for a little over a year and a half now. And I got started in the height of the pandemic where clips from Dimension 20 started coming across my TikTok. And I was just like, this red-haired man who talks strange is very interesting. And I started watching Brennan Lee Mulligan and his shows and fell in love with the idea and figured, you know what, screw it. We're going to try this. And so here we are now. And I've got the wonderful chance to DM this fantastic group of people. And I'm just so excited to be here.
Yes. I also know of Brendan Lee Mulligan's work and also found him during the pandemic. I think that's an excellent way into TTRPGs.
Yeah, my very first encounter with him was the Baron from the Baronies clip. Yeah.
My first was the jailbreak where he's like, it's time to make some bacon. So good.
That laws are made by the dominant,
exactly.
the dominant sociopolitical thing. And I was like, oh, damn, this shit's deep.
Honestly, the thing that I love most about his DM style or his skill as a DM is that he can monologue like a motherfucker. Like he can just monologue an incredible monologue you would use at an audition off the top of his head in the moment.
Yeah.
What crazy.
It's insane. I have to script it. I can't just do it right off the top of my head. But yeah, there's 4 other people here, so you guys can all say
who
hi
else
now
we got
too.
around the table?
Hi, I'm Ariana or Ari. My pronouns are she, her. I play Alara Spinelspark, a half-elf artificer whose pronouns are also she, her, on the Rainbow Dice Club podcast. I've been playing D&D for about a year. I just had my 1-year anniversary like a week ago. So pretty new, but like, head over heels in love, and also diving headfirst into the TTRPG space. So exciting.
Hi, I'm Supriya or Zoop. My pronouns are she, her, and I play Ziva, whose pronouns are also she, her, and she's a totally normal human. Nothing to see here. I think the very, very first time I played D&D was in high school, so it was probably 3.5. And then near the end of high school and in college, there was some playing of different games. I don't think it was ever D&D, but it was different role-playing games. And then out of college, at some point, someone posted online, hey, in my home game 2 people are leaving, so like we're looking for people. And I like, oh, like I knew the people who were leaving and the people who were looking, and I said yes, I'd love to join. And so for a long time that was my only TTRPG thing, was just this once every 2 weeks D&D. And then there's a play called She Kills Monsters, which is if anyone doesn't know, it is D&D based. It's this woman who is discovering her deceased sister through D&D, through a D&D module that she had written. And so as a result, there's a lot of people auditioned for and joined this show specifically because of their interest in D&D. So from there, I ended up in like another home game, and I also got introduced to some other people playing games and who eventually started streaming games. So I've been in some streamed games on Beggar Street, which is non-D&D, is basically their big thing, as in I'm begging you to play something other than D&D. And then the bat signal for this podcast showed up, for whatever reason. Like, I guess maybe it's another example of Ari and Dusty psychically reaching out to me
through the multiverse.
Through the multiverse.
Yes. And here we are.
Awesome.
So that is my long convoluted tale.
And now we're at W. Wayra, how are you? What brought you in?
Hello, my name is Wayra. My pronouns are she, they, and I'm your resident cryptid. I play Varys, whose pronouns are he, they, in the Rainbow Dice Club actual play podcast. I started playing D&D maybe like 4-ish years ago, 4.5. So still fairly recent. I started playing as actually, oddly enough, a recommendation from my therapist, who was like, you need to get back into a creative outlet. You really enjoy like improv, you enjoy acting, and you need an outlet for your art. So like, and you need to start getting out there and making new friends. So, maybe like, and you expressed an interest. You said you're watching this show called Critical Role. You should go and see if you can join someone's game. So cut to a few weeks later where I find a group of random strangers, shout out to my home game, one of my other home games, who gave me my first ever experience at the table, and it has been only going up from there.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Dusty, last but very much not least.
Hello.
Who are you? What's your deal?
My name is Dusty. My pronouns are she, they, and I play Ivy Nightbreeze Tinkerfey, whose pronouns are she, her. And I've been playing D&D and TTRPGs for about 6 years now. It started because my best friend was into D&D, and he like legit begged me to play with him because he had a one shot he'd wrote that he wanted to run, and he didn't have anybody to run it with. And I was like, you know what, fine, whatever. I love you. I'll do this for you. And ended up having the fucking time of my life. I played a half elf bard, and I've been homebrewing since day one. She was a Selkie. So we had to make this table where I would have to roll periodically, and whenever I rolled and land on, I would either turn into a seal or part of me would turn into a seal, which was a lot of fun.
That's amazing. I have a home game right now where we found some custom rules for somebody who wanted to run as a skeleton. And whenever they roll a nat 1, they roll on a table and like different things will happen to them. And one of them is just that they like shatter apart into different pieces of their skeletal self. And then they have to like gather all their parts back up. It's
that
fun.
would be so fun. Oh my God.
Well, thank you all for introducing yourselves. I want to start with some, running the game centric questions, because I know that Lex is going to have to leave halfway through this interview. So Lex and company, when you started building this world for actual play, which is, I've sort of talked to the listenership before about how different those can be from a home game to an actual play game. How did you, when you all were making characters and when Lex, you were designing this campaign, how did you go about that for an actual play experience?
So I'm a very new DM. I already mentioned that I only started playing tabletop games about 1.5 years ago. This is my first large campaign I ran. I mean, honestly, Ari and Dusty have been my very first players since the time I started running the games. So they were in my very first one shot way back in August, I think. July, August.
Yeah.
So I don't really have a really strong frame of reference for building a world outside of building it for an actual play or building it for this specific actual play. Basically, when I started working on the world, I started at one place. So I started at Dragon's Nest, which is the first town in the world that we see at the beginning. And I fleshed out how that town came to be, what the history of that town was, and then started expanding the world from that point. And then as these wonderful human beings started creating their characters and sharing their backstories of these characters with me, I started making changes to the world to fit that better so that it would be more like these characters truly live in this world, Yeah.
Truly,
so, Ari's character, Alara, she is the reason why there's such intense scientific references. There are literal scientific labs throughout the entirety of the country where research and development is constantly happening. And that came about because Ari said, hey, what if I played an artificer? That was how that one started. And we figured that with an artificer and with science being so important to that character, it's got to be important in this country. So that means that the capital is going to be this major scientific hub in this country. So that's what the capital city had to be like. And then as for physically building the place, I did the drop dice method on a piece of paper that was too small, so they got all clumped together. And then I doodled it, and then I started putting places down, and then somebody in our wonderful Discord server agreed to actually flesh it out and make it look like an actual map. So shout out to @Amphibian for that.
Amphibian, yeah.
They're awesome. Everybody here knows this, and I will say it every single time. Lex hates naming things. If there's one thing I hate about world building, it is naming things. I hate it. And so when they all started giving me their backstories, I was like, all right, cool, name some NPCs for me, name some places for me, name
towns,
whatever.
yeah.
And we have a OneNote that's just breaking down all of these different facets of the world, including religion, factions, all sorts of stuff. And I'm like, cool, anybody who wants to make up that shit for me, cool.
Do it.
I hate naming things.
Yeah, I think that's like such a real thing that every like I think good DM really collaborates with their players and tries to incorporate them into like so they have a really strong hook into the world. So
Well, it takes the pressure off of me.
oh yeah, totally. It's the best. I mean,
Yeah.
every time I run a game, I actually will make a map. I run a lot of like modern day stuff because I really like Powered by the Apocalypse systems. And a lot of those you can fit into you know normal everyday places. And Google Maps has a really great feature called My Maps, and you can literally just find a region, take out all the names, and then drop pinpoints and make your own town via.
That's actually
My Map.
really cool. I
That's
did
cool.
not know about
Yeah,
that.
it's killer. It's awesome.
That's really cool.
The thing I'll do though is I'll leave about 6 of those pins unnamed and undefined, and then when I sit down with my players, I'm like, okay, you're coming into this world. We've just like made all this stuff. Like, what is here? Like, what is this pin? Because you're driving through the town right now, and you see this out your window. What do you see? And then they start building the map too, so that I can. It's kind of another weird way of like tricking your players into telling you what they're interested in.
Well, that is it too. You know, taking in the backstories and being like, okay, so you want to say that your character is from a certain type of place. Pick where it's going to be on the map and tell me about what it was like growing up there from your character's perspective. Tell me about what sort of things you got to do on a regular basis. What was the lifestyle like in this town? What sort of things were going on? And so, yeah, we really did a deeply collaborative style of world building that, again, as me being a new DM and this being the first time I've world built for anything, it was really helpful for me because it was overwhelming at first, like having to look at this many different things that I didn't realize would be involved.
But like I think we all felt really included. In like we all have a stake. We all have our own little stake in this world, I think. And when Lex was like, name your town, and then like you said, tell me what it's like growing up there. I had such a good time expanding my personal backstory, like expanding Alara's backstory into like, how did growing up in this place affect her life? Not just like what things happened to her, but just experiencing and living in this place. And I was like, well, what are some cool things that could have happened? Or maybe not cool. What are some interesting things that could have happened in this place that would affect who she is as a person and how she grew up? And I really, versus like a DM just being like, here, this is where you're from and this is what happened to you. And now like make something. That's not fun for me. I want, I want to be able to have like the creative freedom with my own character.
Yeah. Partly because I don't know how to do it all for you, so I don't try.
Yeah, see, there you go.
It definitely helped with, like you said, connecting with the character and, to the aspect of translating it from a home game to a story that you're telling. It helps get into character more so because you have to be in character in order to portray what's happening, right? At a home game, you can just be like, my person does this. Whereas with the podcast, you have to be like, and then I, as Ivy, do this, and this is my reasoning, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point that I want to dig in a little bit more into, because when you are performing, maybe I should start with the home game. In a home game, there's a lot of different ways to interact with the game. You can't, like when I first started, I was deeply uncomfortable with completely putting myself into a character. So my first character, Bill Stabums, wonderful rogue.
My first was a rogue too.
Yeah, woo! Rogues are the best.
My first was a rogue too.
Aw.
Rogues are the best. They allow you to do anything. It's the best class to start in on. I will die on this hill. But the thing about Bill Stabums is that Bill Stabums would always be talked about in the third person for a long time, because I'd be like, Bill Stabums does this. Bill does this. And then as I started to get a little bit more comfortable and I could like associate my personal self a little bit more in with this character, I just started making it a joke that Bill talked about himself in the third person because he was a egomaniac and all this kind of stuff. And then towards the end, I was saying like, I do this, I do that kind of thing, and really trying to be a little bit more storytellery or actory with my character. And that also, you know, I found a way to make it make sense with the arc of the character being a little bit more of a real person at the end. But I think that with a actual play, you really have to, because you are doing a performance, so you are doing all of this stuff, and you have to stay with it and kind of be thinking as the character and all that kind of thing. How does that affect your play style? Because a lot of people, when they are starting D&D, have a hard time with mechanics. Sometimes they are like lost in their character sheet. If you've never played a certain class before, it can be really confusing to keep up with all of the different things that you have. And this is for both Lex and everyone else. When you are trying to stay in character and do these things, how do you perpetuate the story while still staying within the D&D sort of framework? Or as a actual play, is the framework the first thing to go? Which
the framework is, in my book, the first thing to go, because they're very it's loose guidelines. You know, when I'm in my home games and I'm fully in my character's mindset, you know, I'm going to do stupid shit because I can and because I want to. But when it comes to staying in the characters' minds for an actual play, I definitely think Supriya can answer this question, because she has done a lot of really good work during our recordings to think through Ziva's actions versus what she would do as Supriya.
Yeah, so there's a world of difference between a home game and an actual play, because in one you're goofing around with your friend. Like, I mean, every home game table is different. So there are home game tables where they're all like really like, let's make a story and let's like get into our characters. And then there's home games that are just like, Bill Stubbins does that. And then someone else is like, yes, and Ravena Ravenclaw does that, and then and you call it a day. So in the home game, there's the whole wide range, and likely you end up with people with different play styles. When you create an actual play, you have to come together as a group and say, okay, we're telling a story. And while we want to serve our characters, more importantly is we need to serve the story. Yes, and is extremely important, but also matching each other in terms of your level of, like, everyone kind of adjusts their level of how much they are describing what they're doing, you know, what facial expressions they're making, how they're saying it, and the like. And you come to this understanding that, okay, we can't just say, oh, she tells the bartender off. You have to tell the bartender off. But it is this agreement. I think the big thing between a home game versus an actual play is the agreement that all the players have to move the story forward narratively in a way that is interesting for the listener. So we come together with that mixed sense. And in terms of how I play Ziva versus how I play anyone at home, at home sometimes I'll definitely make a cop out. Shri goes and does this. Like, we don't have to role play it out. Shri wants to buy a clay figurine, so you know, she trades this for that and we're good. When I'm in the actual play, it doesn't matter like what kind of shitty day I've had or anything like that. I need to bring myself in, and I have to become Ziva, and I have to trust in my fellow players and my DM that they're going to give me the space to be like, okay, this is what's going on in Ziva's head. So I need to bring myself in here, and then based on that, she's going to act this way. All right, now I'm ready to narrate it. So Ziva walks into the tavern and just flashes a great smile and says, welcome everybody to, you know, something like that. So I think that's the difference.
I really liked the what you said about how the difference one thing that I picked out of that is so important, I think, for an audience to understand, because a lot of people are getting into TTRPGs through actual plays these days. And I think that that's really wonderful. Yeah. And it has, I think, a lot of really great effects on the genre in general, because it's starting to push everything to be more story focused. And so it also like facilitates systems being developed that can do more interesting things and to tell more interesting stories. One thing that I have heard from a lot of people when they start playing, though, if that is their vector in, is like it just isn't as fun as when I'm like listening to Critical Role or whatever. Like, I can't do this, and they start getting down on themselves and everything like that. And I think that what you were saying was so important, that when somebody comes in as an actual play, person, sits down at a table, what they are doing is actually kind of work. They are literally saying, okay, we are all sitting here doing a job, which is not to have fun or to do all this stuff, though that is part of it.
We have don't get us wrong. We have to cut out so much of the like shenanigans and the nonsense. But you're right. What winds up staying in the story is the part that is the job to some extent
of
I would
pushing
say.
the story
there's
forward,
that
but
there's that, and it's also I think one of the things that is challenging when you're new to D&D and you try it out is the idea that everything is going to be like watching Dimension 20 and Critical Role.
Yes.
You have to we have to remember
there has to be an adjustment.
Yeah, we have to remember that
for sure.
The DMs at our home tables are not professionals. We're not professionals. They're also trying to have a good time, not just and they're doing doing their best. Everybody has a different style.
They're not
and something else to remember is like, and this is something that even came up in our game. This shit is edited. Like one of the things that I got caught up with at one point was not the characters, players asking me for clarification and feeling like then everything's getting repeated twice, so that I'm saying it to the player and then the player's saying it in character. And I was like, am I not telling you guys enough? Like, am I keeping too much of it secret until too late or whatever? And Dusty, I think, was the one to say, no, this is what they do in other podcasts. They just edit this shit out, and that's what we're going to do too. They edit out the exposition from the DM and let the player just say it. That's why it's said twice, You can't compare. I mean, you can compare home games to produced games, but you're going to always be disappointed in some way, shape, or form because it's not the same.
There's something else to remember though as well. Like, give your fellow players and your DM some slack, because they're not. If you're getting into this because of Critical Role or Dimension 20, that's amazing. Don't get me wrong. We're not here to gatekeep.
Again, I came here from Dimension 20, so yeah.
But to keep in mind that the people who are doing those are professional actors and voice actors. They're not your everyday, I love D&D, let's play this game and make a great story together.
And also to that point, because I think it's a great one, like, I'm also a professional actor, and I don't usually play games at my home table like those people play those actual plays. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's like a completely
energy.
different sort of goal in mind. It's like just to have fun and to hang out with friends and to tell a fun story. But
it's
just different,
I have musical theater training. I have been training since I was 5 years old. It is also very important to remember it is okay to make mistakes, because we make them. They're just cut out.
Yeah.
Yeah, we make mistakes all the time, multiple times in episodes.
Well, I don't know if they're always even cut out. I literally misgendered myself during intros, and I think that's Dave.
There's that one. That's a fun one. But it's also, I
kept that in.
We literally had, in our current arc, which is the Dragon's Nest arc, the very first arc of the story, the last battle, or the last like big climax of the arc, we first of all had to record twice. We re-recorded it because, first of all, there was a lot of stress the first time we were running it, a lot of ambiguity as to where we were going as a podcast due to
stuff
OGL things,
and we were
not
just
in a good
it was
mindset.
bad, and so I was rushing things, and it was bad, and we all were like, or at the end at least, I said, "Hey, that was bad," and everyone else said, "Yeah, I think so too." So we started over, and then the second time we ran it, I was in a really bad headspace, and we got into one round of combat, and
we just cut the episode.
And I just went, we gotta stop. I gotta stop. I gotta go to bed. I'm done.
Yeah.
And you don't do that really in home games, just because like you only meet once a week, and it's just kind of much more relaxed. But this is a different. There's a little bit more
because we know we're producing for an audience.
Yeah.
We want it to be good.
If we're not in the right headspace, we need to not record tonight and do it on a night when we are all there. And we give ourselves grace. We give each other space to be in that, and and it's worked out for the best because it's teaching us how to communicate even better and better with each other. It's teaching us to not hold so tightly to even our own expectations sometimes. And when we do let go, so maybe this is for anyone listening, when you let go of the expectation a little bit and you just let things flow, things will flow naturally.
You get amazing moments.
And
Oh my God.
And one thing I did want to say, just if anybody is listening and looking to get more into character in their home game, something that we started doing and we find extremely helpful is when Lex drops us back into an episode, they kind of go over what, where we left off, which everyone I think does a recap, but we then each character gets a minute or two to explain to everybody their inner thoughts and what they're feeling in this moment. And it helps us so much to just kind of talk that out and then go right into the scene from there. And I suggest to do it at home tables if that's something that you're looking to do, is to stay more in character.
It sets
do that
the vibe
at the beginning of the game and get in the headspace. Yeah,
it sets the vibe. It sets the group tone.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. I think recaps are also something that I encourage people who are new DMs. When you have a week long or 2 week long or month long, depending on how frequent your group meets, break between games, do not feel like it is a personal failing if your group sits down and goes, so what did we do last time?
Yeah.
Like, where are we?
Do it
Who are
when
we? What's going on?
We literally will have 10-minute breaks because we will record 2 episodes in one sitting. And we'll have a 10-minute break between episodes. And half the time we all come back and go, I'm sorry, I just, my brain just reset. What happened 5 minutes ago?
Yeah.
Every time one of us is just, and sometimes it's me, just goes, I don't know what's happening anymore.
Well, I think we talked about this. When you're in a situation where you're being recorded and you kind of feel that invisible audience, you go into a fugue state.
Yes.
There are times where I literally have to mute my mic and think about it and talk to myself, because I'm like, what am I doing? What is happening right now? And I have to already do exercises for this stupid accent I inflicted on myself.
Yeah, I don't feel bad for you on that.
Though. Leave it. It's so good.
So I have to sit here going, okay, how do I talk again? How does Ivy talk? How do I personally, Dusty, talk? Because the lines get blurred, and that's another important thing is home games are meant to be fun. Actual plays are meant to be fun, but also
work.
Right? There's another element to it. There's always going to be another element to it. It's never just going to be, all right, guys, that was shit, but see you next time, and we keep going. It was like, all right, guys, that was shit. Fuck.
We gotta start over.
Yeah.
And we've had that experience.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about where it was, but we definitely had a session where in the
cursed
end
episode.
The cursed episode.
No. We had one where we were
dicked
more
around the whole
metagaming.
time.
We dicked around, but we were metagaming. We were more interested in loot than anything else, and we did things that weren't what the characters would do, but what the players would do in a home game. Like in a home game, you're like, I gotta get the loot. I gotta get the loot. Like, I'm gonna beat people up. Gonna get the loot. Check all the bodies. Like, it doesn't matter that the city is burning over there. I need 5 minutes to check these bodies.
That's not a spoiler.
Someone has copper.
Just to be clear, that's
not a spoiler at all. That's
that doesn't happen in our in this right now. Like,
that doesn't happen, because I'm not going to spoil it for you guys. But
I just felt like I needed to clarify that.
We did that, and we had a lot of fun doing that. But then at the end of the day, we had to go, all right, but that wasn't great content. That was hilarious.
Yeah.
And we're cracking up at ourselves, but that was terrible content.
That episode's for the Patreon, you know what I mean?
No, we didn't even.
It's not even. It's not even.
I think Ari just deleted it.
I have everything. I keep everything.
Is that why our drive is like almost full?
Y'all, this is blackmail. This is what
blackmail.
That's
Ari's like, remember that one episode? I will release it if you don't shape the fuck up.
Can you repeat that like we're in a podcast, please?
Yeah, exactly.
But that's why you never don't judge your home games based on an actual play.
For sure.
There is craft that either there's the crafting behind the scenes with editing, or like with Critical Role, they've just been crafting their skills their whole life. And there's stuff on Critical Role that you won't get on like another D&D podcast. Because like you don't on not another D&D podcast, you don't get a lot of the hours long talk about what do we do next that you do on Critical Role. So like even if you compare between actual plays, you can see a difference between like something that is live recorded and something
also
that's
Critical
recorded.
Role, they were actors who started playing D&D.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's what I mean by they've been practicing.
There's that too. I am not a writer.
We are the people.
Before we continue on, Lex, I know you have to go to another game.
Yes.
I just want to, we'll definitely have you on again. I would really love to talk about home brewing for actual play and also home brewing worlds like in general,
and you can talk with all of these wonderful people as well, because almost all of the home brewing that happens in our podcast, especially as it relates to the characters, has also been a highly collaborative process. So each of the characters has some honestly pretty in-depth level of home brewing associated with them. And I'm not somebody to homebrew for the sake of homebrewing. I'm homebrewing because there is narratively something interesting about what we want to do. Mm-hmm. And there is a gap in the literature, essentially, in the canon information. And so it really comes down to, okay, what do you want to make?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now let's make that half the time you have to go, all right, that's too much. Let's bring it down.
No, you can't wield 7 swords at once.
Yeah, you can't do 15 attacks in one round. I'm sorry, Mira. I know that
multi attack.
I know that Varys wants to use his attacks all the time. It's fine. But at the same time, I feel like homebrew is where creativity in this area can really flourish, because there are some really, like, one of the things that always drove me a little crazy in the canon Dungeons and Dragons stuff and most TTRPG character creation stuff is the idea that the default for all of the half races, their other half is always human.
Yeah.
So no, that's not what happens. I mean, we even see that with Varys, who is a half elf, half orc.
No.
Well, no, it's stupid because I'm just like,
yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah. So, it's where the fun starts to come out.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Where can people, if they're interested in hearing some of your more of your thoughts on DMing or whatever news you have, where can people find you before you head out?
Well, most recently, you can hear about my comments against my comments against TERFs, but you can see me on Twitter and Instagram at LexGetPizza.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to see everyone, and have a great night, everyone.
We love you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, DM's gone.
All right, everyone. Let's talk brass tacks. Tabletop is brought to you by the following sponsor. Hey there, everyone. This is Nick from Tabletop, and I have an awesome thing to share with you. Get ready to embark on an epic journey with a new TTRPG, Mythcraft. Mythcraft is the ultimate TTRPG system and universe brought to you by all of the folks at the Homebrew Network in partnership with Quasi Real Publishing. It has one of the most robust character creation systems I've seen on the market, and you as the player will have the power to design all the types of characters you've ever wanted to play in your dream campaign, and it has a huge narratively rich universe built into it. Choose from up to 14 lineages, 11 classes, countless occupation and profession options, and a ton of talents makes this game super customizable for whatever you're trying to do. It has endless intriguing and unique combinations to create a perfect hero, and the best part, you'll get new options for your character with a new talent point every level, so no more having to wait for that feat or to try to build something homebrew. This allows you to customize every single class on the fly. We'll need your support to make this happen. Sign up for the pre-launch update at mythcraftrpg.com and get ready to embark on a really amazing adventure. Mythcraft RPG opens on Kickstarter on March 15th, and you won't want to miss out on this thrilling journey, so you can do this. Go to mythcraftrpg.com and check out our feed, because we are going to be interviewing the creators of Mythcraft, and it's going to be super great, so keep an ear open for that as well. Welcome back, everyone. Lex had to step away, but I'm still here with the fabulous players of Rainbow Dice Club. Everyone, thanks for sticking around. I want to talk a little bit more about playing in this context, and also how you guys can drop into character. We already sort of touched on that subject, but also Lex brought up a really great point of homebrewing and changing the system to be what you need it to be. We kind of got a little bit of what that looks like from the DM side from Lex, but I would really love to hear, as players, like how do you use this system, which this is controversial, but is my personal opinion, is not the best system for telling stories.
It's not. No, I think we all kind of agree with you on that one.
Yeah. Because man, everyone, there's actually like a little bit of a drinking game in the tabletop Discord about every time I talk about Monster of the Week, somebody takes like a shot or whatever.
Monster of the Week is so good, though.
So let's talk a little bit about, as players, how has your experience been? You all have different levels of experience with D&D. How has your experience been kind of switching into the actual play sort of model of play and working with Lex to craft the story? Like, how has that experience been, and like what are your major like feelings and stuff that you would want to share with an audience who might be interested in starting an actual play, or just listens to them all the time and wants a little peek behind the curtain, that kind of stuff?
My biggest advice is find a DM you actually want to play with. Don't settle because it's what's available to you.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there are so many horror stories about people who find a DM that's looking for people. They have rose-colored glasses. They ignore all of the warning signs, and then suddenly you're 3 sessions deep, and you're like, actually,
I think we need to put a disclaimer that
and you feel obligated to continue to play.
Relation relevance to anybody living or dead is totally coincidental and not,
we needed somebody who
deliver
was going to fit with what we wanted to do, and 2, who would be open to communication. Like, obviously, we don't want a DM that we can just kind of walk all over, and Lex is not that by any stretch.
I sort of got that feeling from talking to Lex.
Lex is so great about that, though. But we wanted somebody who was flexible, who we could talk with, who wasn't going to make us feel stupid, right? And I think from that very first one shot that they ran, it was so evident that they were like, I'm a team player, I'm here for you, but also I'm not going to let you bullshit your way through this. We're actually going to have role play, we're going to have meaningful conversations.
I think that is such a, like, even for folks who are just looking for a home game, a lot of people feel trapped in a game with like a suboptimal environment or experience that is happening. In fact, we just had a mailbag episode where someone was like, I don't know how to find a group to play in, you know what I mean? And I suggested essentially just finding the actual play or whatever you're into that you like, finding that Discord that is associated with that, and there's going to be a looking for group section there that have people who also
and
like
you're going to find, that's where you're going to find your people.
Exactly.
Like, that's what it is. You just have to find your people, and don't get discouraged. Like, it doesn't happen right away. And
sometimes you have to go through fire, it's worth for it.
we have some horror stories, but but I think that the big thing for me has been that this group has ruined D&D for me and with other people. because we are so in sync, and when I role play with the Rainbow Dice Club, I trust them so much, and I think anyone who plays TTRPGs can say that there is a level of vulnerability that happens when you're sitting at a table, even if it's a home game, even if it's casual.
That's literally why I referred to Bill Stabums as Bill Stabums for so long, was because I am a professional actor. I'm an improviser. I have stood in front of people and pretended to be other people. I'm very used to it. Sitting down at a table with, like, even with your close friends and being like, I'm being this guy or whatever is like an inherently vulnerable thing that is happened. So
and so you have to trust your table. You have to trust the players, the people that you play with. And I have grown so much just knowing this group and playing together and exploring like the way that we role play together. And I feel so comfortable with them. And so I have to switch gears when I play in other games because it's never, again, because also this is a production. It's so different. But don't stop looking. Your people are out there, and you will find them. And when you do, all of the stuff behind it will be worth it just to have found, when you find your group. So
yeah, totally. I think that's such a great message. But I do want to talk specifically, Weira, you were talking about how you were kind of convinced to rejoin D&D and look for like actual play in other groups because it was an outlet for creativity for you and things like that. And like, for me personally, I really love it because it feels like an empathy tool as well. Like I'm able to kind of put myself in other people's shoes. It was what kind of allowed me to figure out some of my gender identity stuff and all other stuff by just like trying stuff out, and figuring out that, I don't sort of associate with a specific thing that I thought was placed upon me my entire life. So Weira, when you sort of went out looking for this creative outlet and that experience, one, how did you kind of do it? Because I know a lot of people have like struggle with getting into those spaces. And also, what would you suggest for people who are also looking to do this sort of
how I found my first group, I did it through social media, of course. Just kind of looking locally for me to find, some people looking for a group to start fresh. And this group there was a DM and 2 other players that this DM knew, but the rest of them were just random people off the internet that we decided to meet up and play. I had a couple of offers and like put a couple feelers out first because, as Ari Dusty said, it's not your first group typically. So I kind of talked to them a little bit, like said, just gave a little intro about myself and asked them some questions such as like, what are your views on, like gender identity and sexual orientation, things, just basic things that I knew I needed people to be comfortable with in order to put myself out there and really open up at a table. And when I found that specific group, they were all queer or knew somebody who was. Many of them were neurodivergent as well. So I was like, well, this is the vibe. Okay. And then meeting them in person, I met them for coffee first before we ever kind of went over to this DM's house.
Yeah.
But it was like immediate, like lots of laughter, lots of positive energy. And we all kind of were theater geeks or had our toes in it a little bit. So I was like, okay, this is cool. This is the vibe. I'm going to stick with this group.
Yeah. I think that the process that you just outlined is like really healthy and one that I hope that everyone sort of models for themselves. Like have your red flags, turn them into questions, and then ask the DM about them or the group about them. Ask them if they do session zeros. I think it is super smart for you to have just like a normal non-game conversation with the DM before 100%. Going and playing with them, because honestly it can kind of feel like you're trapped if you're in a game and you're just like I'm gonna leave. Then there's like a lot of weird expectations that are put on you, all that kind of stuff. It's icky. So yeah, I think that's a really smart way to go about it, and really healthy. And if you are not laughing in your first session, then you never have to play with them again.
Get out. That's like an immediate alarm that you should be aware of. You should always be. You should have a good time, even at session 0.
Yeah. So for everyone, I guess, Lex was talking a little bit about how you guys were homebrewing with them to figure out the world and your characters a little bit more deeply. Can you guys talk a little bit about that? Because I know a lot of folks kind of feel like the homebrewing kind of lives with the DM in a lot of games, where they are the person who adjudicates the world. And so they are going to be able to, for the one who makes story decisions, they're the one who makes homebrewing decisions. And a lot of times people feel like they are just kind of a passenger in a ride that is happening, kind of thing. Can you talk a little bit about how it's different at your table, and how you some tips and tricks for people who want to have a little bit more autonomy over their character and with the story that they're telling, and homebrew, all that kind of stuff?
I have a funny story about that, actually.
Go for it.
My character was originally a completely different character up until 36 hours before we recorded our first episode. My first character, who I will play at some point, it was named Lex.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can see where that might be a little bit of an issue.
A little confusing.
And so I came up with a different name, and then I was sitting there thinking about it. I was thinking about the dynamics of the group that we'd already formed, and I was going to play Blood Hunter. I love Blood Hunters. They're so cool, but it didn't fit with the group's vibe, right? It's a very specific sort of character to play. And so at 10:30 at night, I messaged Lex and said, hey, I have questions about my character. I want to do something different. And they messaged me and they're like, can you call me? And so we talked for like an hour and a half, and together we came up with Druid, because it fit narratively with where Ivy was from, because where Ivy's from is the same, right?
Yeah.
Most of the characters' backstory is the same, but it's just a completely different vibe of character.
Sure.
And so we came up with that, and then we were talking about it, and I was looking through the Druid subclasses, and none of them fit. None of them fit with Ivy. And so I was Googling, and I came across the phrase Circle of the Dead, and I didn't end up going with the one that was homebrewed originally. And we talked about it, and we came up with our Circle of the Dead, which is so cool. I'm so excited, because we're going through it as we scale and level up and talk about certain things. We actually just had like another talk about my subclass and different things that we needed to rectify in game. And so it's that element of, for us, I feel like it's the player's idea. You bring it to the DM, and then Lex will go, all right, let's talk this through together.
Yeah.
Instead of Lex going, this is what I think you should do, and you're doing it. It's more of like a bouncing ideas back and forth. Like, no, that's too OP. No, that's not powered enough. You know?
Yeah, it's like a story pitch.
Yeah. That's a really good way to think about it, actually. It's sort of like I'm pitching this idea to the group, and everyone kind of signs off on it, and then it moves forward, kind of thing.
Exactly. It's pitching Varys to Lex was very, very fun, because Varys has a lot of layers of homebrew to them. And Lex was like, not only were they like, hell yeah, let's do that, but also maybe we should bring it back just a little. But they were very much like, yes, and then we should also do this. And then every time I turn around and think we're done, Lex is like, oh, but like I get a message in the middle of the night sometimes, and Lex is like, I just thought of this. What do you think? And I'm like, yes, hurt me, please.
Yeah. It's the classic, like, well-adjusted people with nice childhoods don't end up as adventurers.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Although, for a long time, all of my characters were nice, well-adjusted, didn't have bad childhoods or anything, and still ended up adventurers. For a very long time, I could not make a character with a tragic backstory. Yeah. So
and you still can't, because Lex kind of made your tragic backstory for you.
But Zoop's experience with this is vastly different, I think, than the three of ours.
Oh my gosh.
But it's still so interesting, and I think it's really something that if you trust your DM enough, you can utilize. And Zoop, please tell this nice person
Well, so I said that I said what subclass I wanted, what subclass I wanted to play, and then I said what I wanted, like the parental, like what their growing up situation was, and then I said, but I don't really know how she got there, so have fun with that.
Was it like, oh, you awake from the Mind Flayer tank?
Oh my god, Baldur's Gate 3.
She remembers, from whenever we start forming memories, 4 or 5. She remembers from 4 and 5 onwards, but you need somebody to remind you of what was before that. And she doesn't have someone to remind her of what happened before that.
Oh,
so
no, she gets a reminder, and it's a reminder for us all, and I hate it.
We are we're like 9 episodes ahead of what is released, and we just finished up.
That's why our language is very careful right now.
Yeah, because we don't want to say. But yeah, we got some good revelations, and there's some cool. And if you're up to date on the podcast, keep listening, because
can we actually talk a little bit about this, because I've always been super fascinated about how actual plays handle twists, secret reveals, things like that. I tend to.
We don't know anything about each other.
Really interesting.
Yeah. We know enough to get by. So at this point, obviously we're ahead. So there are things that we know that the audience doesn't know.
We know now.
But if you are caught up, you'll know when I say Ivy's wild shape. That was completely, nobody knew.
A surprise.
Nobody knew how that was going to form until I was describing it. And the look on everybody's faces made it worth it.
This is fascinating. So maybe we can talk a little bit more about this, because I have found in my games and, just in general in life, games I've played in, games I've run, that secrets are maybe one of the biggest traps that a player / DM can ever put themselves into. It's just a bad situation sometimes, because you can be a thing that you have worked out with this player, and it's like, oh man, your dad is actually this skeleton that's been traveling with you for 10 days, and this skeleton you found in on the side of the road, and it's like, oh, you do a DNA test on the skeleton, and weirdly it matches you, and the person's like, huh? And looks at everyone, and everyone's like, what does that mean? I don't understand.
Yeah. So we are all having love affairs with each other's. I love all of these characters so much, and the more that no one tells me about themselves, the more I want to know it. And so we decide, I don't know how it came. We just decided one day that we're not going to tell anybody anything about our characters' backstories. We wanted it to be if these characters are actually meeting today, then they know nothing about each other. So we knew our subclasses, so that we knew our classes, so that we obviously needed to know those things. But as far as everyone's deep dark past, no idea, and it is driving me absolutely.
I cannot stress enough.
I'm not.
And, I took that from Critical Role. There is a lot of that. A lot of people not knowing people's past, and people not knowing their own past. I'm right now blanking on which characters have that problem. But
Molly,
yes, Molly Mock is the biggest example, and the reason why I deeply wanted this experience of not knowing where I came from.
But I cannot stress enough that this is born from the trust that we have with each other, the repertoire that we built prior to this. This could have very easily have been, here's everything laid out, but we utilized a stoplight system. So we each filled out what our hard line stops are, what our yellows are, what our greens are, right? We trust each other enough to not have something in a backstory that's going to intentionally trigger somebody else, because because they find it funny or because they didn't realize it. We had very frank conversations about it. We have implicit trust in each other that if something happens that we are not comfortable with, it stops, it restarts, and it is omitted, and we go forward.
Yeah. I think that's every time you guys are like, hey, we edit a bunch, I'm always like, this is good for people to hear. But I think that's so interesting because I've also played around with a system of open secrets at the table of the players going around and saying, a lot of times if it's just sort of an experiment I was running with folks, being like, hey, everyone tell everything that is up with your character, and down to like the weird things in your past or the things that might be like happening or mistakes you made that might come back to haunt you kind of thing. And I found that it has changed the homebrew games I play in both positive and negative ways. Sometimes it leads folks to make decisions for like other characters that they really wouldn't have any personal knowledge of and things like that, or consider something. But at the same time, it also means that when something starts coming up within the narrative, everyone together as a unit can start steering the ship to be like, I want to see what happens over here, because there's something big over there that I want to know more about, or I want to hit this storyline or trigger this thing that I know is in this character's backstory and I want to see it play out. So it's really interesting that there's 100 ways to do this stuff, and it feels like there's pros and cons to each. I'm very interested in playing the way you guys do too, because I've never really had a super successful version of that, but at the same time it sounds like it's a blast. So
it is.
So the other thing is that we're not having those conversations of if we steer this way be trouble, this way be interesting. And Lex is really instrumental in that. You and Lex can exchange glances and send a quick text to Lex, and Lex will give you the nod, and then you can be like, my character's kind of edging to go east for some reason, and everybody's like, okay, let's go east. Sounds good to me.
Well, you know what I was thinking about it as this whole conversation was happening. Metagaming, you can say that you don't metagame as much as you want, but there's always a little bit of metagaming that happens no matter what. And so we want genuine reactions from our characters on the role play is so important to us and to the story that we're creating. If we knew each other's secrets, we would not genuinely have our character reactions the way that we get to have them now. And I think for me personally, that is the biggest, because I want to know everyone's secrets, but I know that it's not the smart, because it will change the way I play my character, whether I am conscious of it or not. There will be subtle things that would be different if I had that knowledge. So yeah, I just wanted to say that because it was putting the pieces together while everyone was just talking.
Totally. Yeah, no, it's a really good point. And I think that I would love to talk to you all a little bit about player versus character in this context, but also in general play. Like you said, Ari, pretty much there's always going to be metagaming, whether that is talking about how best to tackle a puzzle or a combat or whatever, down to if there are open secrets or whatever, we all need to drive the boat this way because this thing is going to happen. It's going to be so cool. So in an actual play scenario, how do you guys separate between players and characters, and how do you get what you need to out of the play when you are to have two separate interests?
I want Wayra to answer
I want
this.
Wayra to answer questions. Wayra doesn't answer any questions because Wayra doesn't want to give anything away.
Specifically, the fact that Wayra versus Varys, I feel are two separate entities completely, and it is so interesting to me. And I'm always so genuinely impressed by Wayra's gameplay and by Wayra as a person, because Varys is intensely fascinating. We know nothing about him. We know nothing about them. Whereas Wayra is the sweetest, most genuine person, and I got that from day one.
Yeah.
Thanks. Oh my god. I'm blanking now because I'm just like riding high on that.
Compliments.
Yeah, I don't do well with compliments. I'm sorry.
Take it.
Okay.
I just imagined you like leaning over the bed, putting the pillow on Wara's face. Take it.
That was not what I was trying to do.
The pillow of compliments.
Yeah,
Take
what compliments?
The pillow just has
Wasn't
compliments
even
written
silent,
across it.
It's like kill him with kindness.
Zoot has this obsession with silencing people in the night with things.
Seriously. No, that's Ziva.
I mean, is it though? No. So
Sorry, go ahead.
damn, that's like a really good question. So for me, getting into character is a process for me. Because Dusty's right. Varys is very different in mindset than I am. I like to see the glass half empty or half full. I'm kind of like an in between positive person. I like to see the best in people, and I really have I want to help everyone.
Yeah.
Even if it's at a detriment to my own self, I would rather help people. Varys is not like that. Contrary to what he puts forward. It's an active effort for him to put himself out there and help people. It's a conscious decision that he has to make. And he makes it all the time. So I have to think about that. And to do the switch for me, it takes me an hour every time we record to get into character because I'm reading his backstory, I'm practicing his accent, and I'm thinking about scenarios, I'm listening to his music. I'm doing everything I have to like get into that darker state of mind. And it's a fun time.
It sounds it.
It's hard.
You're like, I really have to bum myself out.
That's exactly it,
That's
though. I
so
have to
funny.
take my mood and plummet it.
I have to get sad.
I'm like,
I have to get sad really fast.
Yeah, I have a character I really have been wanting to play for a long time that's built out completely in my head. And I just don't have a venue for it. And it's the same thing where I'm like, if I were to play that character, I would have to be so specific with all of my choices because a lot of my other characters are at first I just went with complete id, whatever can do whatever at any moment at any time because it's actually fairly easy to play like that. And then I started shifting into the responsible sort of straight man person being I have to keep everyone on the track. You know what I mean? I have to keep this train rolling.
Dude.
But this character would be completely a side character, not leader, not crazy weirdo, but would have a lot going on, and that's so much harder to play.
It's really complicated, but I do like the challenge. I like to. My idea for making characters every time I make one, whether it's for actual plays or home games, is to make a character that'll challenge me in some way. And I went a little overboard with him, but that's okay.
I think that Dusty and Supriya will have better answers as well than I will to this question because it's kind of easy for me because Alara speaks if the way that I speak if I didn't filter any of my thoughts. So when I play Alara, I'm just just say the first thing that comes into your mind and then let it become a word vomit, and that's exactly what she is. And she's very similar to me in a lot of ways as well. So it's kind of easy for me. I think Supriya does a wonderful job as well because Supriya is playing a lower intelligence character.
Oh my god, yes.
And it's, I give them a lot of props. And Ivy's very... Well, Dusty will tell you about Ivy and how she's kind of unaffected by, social constructs and things. And so I think that everyone else has a way more difficult time than I do.
I love it. Ivy is really fun because I did not realize a lot about her until we started playing, until Lex opened the episode on Ivy going into Dragon's Nest. And suddenly she was doing things and taking over. And I was like, okay, fuck, cool. The fact that she'll just leave a conversation she's not invested in, just straight up leaving. I was like, I don't know where that came from, but it's a central part to her character.
It's a character trait now.
It is. And it comes up a lot, actually. And she says things. One of our favorite things to quote, and I didn't realize it was going to be as funny as it was coming out of my brain, was, "I am obsessed with your priorities." And her voice, I don't know, are you on TikTok?
I had to delete it because I was way too invested.
Did you ever see the videos
my For You
of that
page.
woman who does the impressions of like upper high society woman who does mundane things, like going to Applebee's? That was Ivy's like voice and inflection for me. I literally sent the group like 3 of those TikToks and went, "This is Ivy." She comes from a situation where she's never had to want for anything and doesn't understand that she never had to want for anything. So we're coming into these situations where it's not as easy for her. And so I have to really sit there and I have to think, like, what would somebody who didn't realize this was a problem would do in this situation? And the accent, obviously. The accent was born from me being worried for some reason that our voices would sound too similar.
Which is the most ridiculous.
It is not a ridiculous thing. I've had people like talk to me as well when like my co-host and I do a roundtable discussion. They're like, everyone sounds the same. And I'm like, that is ridiculous.
Yeah. Right. We do not sound the same.
That was the idea, right? But then suddenly it became an integral part of her. She wouldn't be the same without the accent. She wouldn't be the same without the cadence in which she talks. Yeah. It's what sets her apart, I think. So yeah, I just I'm not that way. I have crippling social anxiety. I could never just leave a fucking conversation like that, and I want to be more like Ivy in that sense.
Like you become your characters after a while, and your characters kind of become themselves as well. Like, you know what I mean?
There's a fascinating study that I read a long time ago. I used to mention it far too much in the episodes, but it literally was saying how with the way our brains work, memory creation is a very strange and not firm thing. So when you experience something in a Dungeons and Dragons campaign or whatever, on your deathbed, when you are remembering things, you will actually place those like fake memories of these adventures you had in the same reality bucket as like normal memories that you actually had.
Hope so.
And you will weight them the same depending on how
if I ever get Alzheimer's, this is going to be a wild ride.
Holy shit. Oh my God.
It's very cool.
That is a concept. Imagine having Alzheimer's or dementia and like your child is talking to you and all of a sudden you're like, "Yes, and I remember coming from that village," and you're like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "Yes, and I defeated the animatronic with that."
In terms of Ziva, the biggest challenge with Ziva is when I have an idea or an instinct, I have to ask myself, would Ziva have that same instinct? Yeah. So
the answer is no.
Like
most of the time.
Let's, we enter I guess the best thing is like we enter a library and what does Ziva want to do versus what does Supriya want to do? Supriya's like, okay, well, what's been important in what we've been doing? Okay, let's go research that. And Ziva's like, hey, look, there's some kids playing out on the playground. I'm going to go join them for a little while. Like, don't mind me. There is one scene where basically everyone wants to strangle Ziva because one particular scene in my head.
I mostly don't want to strangle Ziva.
But there's one scene where there's so much you can do. There is so much you can investigate. And Ziva's like,
oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
I don't think I'm going to investigate anything.
Yeah, I did want to strangle
I want to know about this one specific, hardly related thing. That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
My God.
Ziva makes me want to strangle her, but like as Varys.
So, but I have to weigh that because, like, she's not a high inch character, and so everything I have to be like, okay, just because I think that this is a super interesting, important thing, that does not mean that Ziva does, and that sometimes means that I have to lose out on information I really want.
But it makes the story, I think, so much. It makes your character more interesting. It makes things more believable, and it makes the characters stand out more on their own. Because if we all were just like, oh, we're just going to investigate everything all the time and learn all the secrets, I guess that's kind of the point
that concept
of the game,
like,
maybe,
if all of our priorities were the same in the end, it wouldn't be interesting to listen to. We would get...
Yeah. You have to have conflict.
It wouldn't be interesting to play, even at
we
like a
would
home table.
100% get more done if that was our priority, but it's not. And it does...
No. Everyone's just dicking around in their own special way. It creates that interesting push and pull
narrative, right? Like, Ivy's main priorities are her friends, but mostly at this point, Bia, the pseudo dragon that she has. That's her companion. Yeah. And so her priorities are going to be different than the priorities of like Alara, who doesn't have that sort of like life that depends on her. So Ivy's going to make different choices than Alara is going to in the same situation because their experiences, what they hold close to their heart is different. And that's what makes the characters interesting. That's what makes any character interesting in any situation that you're in.
Yeah, I agree.
To this point, I think, and maybe this will be our final question before we start coming to a close here, but a lot of people have very different ideas on how to make characters, how to write backstories, all that kind of stuff. And even in this conversation, we've had several different sort of methodologies, like Dusty, you saying, like, I didn't really know all of Ivy's stuff before we started. And then they kind of like made themselves apparent. Whereas others were just like, I have everything written down. I know all this stuff. Like, I feel pretty centered in what this character is. If you are to give some advice for folks who are trying to build a character for a role play heavy campaign or an actual play or something that requires a lot of character work, I guess, how would you suggest going about it?
Speak to your strengths. First and foremost, if you are a person who needs more control, by all means, write everything out. Write their nuances, write their flaws, write their tics. But if you're somebody who, like, for example, like I mentioned earlier, I've done theater my whole life. I know that for me, it is, I need the bare bones of something and then I need to do it. I need to be in that moment and then I can retain what was done. So for me, it was easy to create that backstory, create like, okay, here's what I want her to be like. Here's the bare bones of her. And I'm learning her even more as we go on. And that's what makes it fun for me, is I like the creative control in that sense. It wouldn't be as fun if Lex had been like, hey, no, I need everything. Give me everything right now. It wouldn't be as fun.
I could not give.
But there are people who...
Well, yeah, because you don't know everything.
That's the whole thing, is speak to your own strengths. Never feel bad for one way or another.
So one thing that the process that I've been going through is, as I said, I actually gave fairly little. But when Ziva does something, afterwards, I'll go back and be like, okay, how she reacted to the situation, what does that tell me about her? There is like one specific time where she gets very upset at somebody for something. And I had to be like, oh, okay, well, this is something that really upsets her now. But how does that tie into this other thing that's pretty similar that doesn't upset her? And then figure out what the nuance there is so that I can continue to give this consistent character. That's been my thing.
So creating a character for me always starts with like a vibe or like a vision. I don't pick a name until like the last minute. I don't let the class define anything. like, so for D&D specifically, I create a person first. And I kind of let that all sink and soak in, and then I start like going through the classes and seeing what might fit. Which apparently is different from a lot of people who play D&D. They say that they pick their class first, and then build off of there. But I think if you're looking to be story heavy, your class won't matter as much as who your character is as a person. So with Alara, anyone who listened to the like our cast interviews would know I struggled with her for a while because I didn't know. I tried out a bunch of different classes for her and nothing seemed genuine. Like at first she was going to be a monk and I had a whole backstory planned out, and I was and we were getting like closer and closer to, you know, having to kind of finalize things. And I was like, it just doesn't feel right. And if it doesn't feel right, I'm not going to do it. So I was like, I need to either pick a different character altogether and shelf Alara, or find a class that fits. And for whatever reason, I hadn't looked at like Artificer, Blood Hunter, and I forgot there was a third one that I hadn't looked at. It was one of the not like official ones. It may have been, I don't remember. Maybe it was a gunslinger. But when I looked at Artificer, it was like an entire new, the character stayed the same to a certain extent, but it was like she slipped into Artificer and everything came to life. Like she came to life when I figured out that that was her class. So I say, do what feels right for you and don't be bound by find a DM that will work with you. Number one. Cause like her subclass is completely homebrew because I didn't like any of them. Her subclass is called Master of Many because I didn't like the idea of her and you'll learn this soon about Alara. She doesn't like to just pick one thing. She wants to, why can't she do all the things? Or why can't she be good at multiple things? And so I was like, I'm just going to make a subclass where I don't have to fit into these little spaces. So this is really long-winded, but go with your heart. Follow your heart is my answer.
I love that. Yeah. I love Alara so I love all the characters so much, but Alara's got a place in my heart. I'm very sorry, everyone. For me, I think go with what Dusty said. Go play to your strengths, because I feel like figuring out how to best build characters really depends on you and how you want to play them, and how, like, what your play style is. For me, I kind of was a mixture, I guess, of Dusty and Ari. I like to know, in my head, a person is everything that's happened to them in the past will make them who they are. It will help shape who they are today. It doesn't define them, just as it does in actual people. It doesn't define them, but it definitely plays a big role. So I had to sit down and write down every single thing that happened to this character and their backstory, which is why Lex, unfortunately, has been succumbed to a 20+ and ongoing backstory. But like, I've literally written every single thing that's happened to them down, all of the NPCs and a little bit about them, what shapes them, all of their scars, things like that. And then I had to sit down and be like, well, what backstory thing fits them? I guess the category for making characters, like, is it criminal? Is it noble? Which one is it going to be? None of them fit, so I had to make my own. And then picking class was really hard because none of them suited him. I wanted him to be intelligent, and like have a bit of class to him, but I also couldn't picture him as anything else but a martial class. And that's not very typical of a martial. So we had to make a whole subclass for a barbarian, because undoubtedly this character has a lot of rage. But yeah, it comes and falls into place piece by piece. And I think you have to know the character first before you can choose the other things when you're going role play.
Yeah, and I think it also like totally is contingent upon the system that you're playing with as well. Like, one thing that kind of like sparked in me is that D&D is specifically made so that nobody is well-rounded. They're all like pieces of a party, right? So So like, but there are other systems if you're really wanting to role play, do a heavy role play, but you don't want the system to sort of like penalize you for investing in intelligence for a barbarian or something. You can do a homebrew, like you were saying, or there's stuff like Dungeon World and some other things that are much more, allowing of that sort of stuff. Real quick, my advice is to pick, if you're someone who's unfamiliar or unpracticed at heavy role playing, but you're really excited to give it a try, I would say all of this is great advice. Also, I would pick something that your character is really bad at and use it as a touchstone to return to, because it can really humanize your character. Like, I know on the Adventure Zone, there was a whole season where one of the characters just couldn't lie. And so every time they got into a situation where they had Doug Newton, my favorite. But it really made him like a real character. It wasn't just like this guy who was like heroic going through everything. He also had this, bumbling side, and it humanizes your character and starts allowing you to figure out more stuff if you're not quite sure. So pick a few things that are either hard yeses or hard no's about what they can and can't do, and then play to that.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome advice.
Well, thank you all so much. I'm so excited. I finally got to talk to you all, not in person, but in this setting, I guess.
It is.
This is like person at this point for me. This is like person for me.
I just everyone, please go to the Rainbow Dice Club. They're on pretty much every pod provider that you can find. Subscribe, download the first episode, take a listen. You've probably heard the trailer a few times on our podcast in the last few months, so give it a try, see what you think, and I suggest you all to follow along on this journey. Where can people find all of you if they want to either follow what you're doing, connect in a different way? What are your social handles or other way people can contact you?
You can contact me by Raven. No, I'm kidding.
I only specifically Ravens.
If it's a crow, I will turn it away at the door. I'm on Twitter. Exactly.
They're just not polite.
They quote too much.
I demand class in my carrier
birds. They say Nevermore
birds.
too much.
Yes.
I am on Twitter as Dusty Penny with 2 Y's, so Dusty Penny PNNYY, because Dusty Penny was taken and Twitter will not give it to me. Yeah, I mean, I'm also on Instagram, but I'm really not like, I don't post much except for when weird things are happening, and then I post a lot.
Great. All right, what about the rest of you? Where can people find you and keep up to date with your thoughts, ideas, and goings-ons?
Well, I mean, unless you are one of these 4, you're not gonna get that much. I'm gonna be honest. I'm not the best communicator, but I do have a Twitter. I have a Facebook, if you can find me. I have an Instagram, I believe. I have a TikTok. None of these things do I post to very regularly. If you want to see me play a game, twitch.com/beggarstreet. On Wednesday nights, I play in a Masks game, and sometimes these folks come watch me. So you can like join them and heckle. Corvi Patel, who is the Scion in a Masks game.
You can join me and lurk.
Powered by the Apocalypse.
So you can join me and lurk in the audience.
Yeah. But yeah, other than that, like, unless you magically scroll your way into our Discord, that's what you're gonna get.
Come to our Discord.
No, I meant our
Discord is not open to the public.
Zoop just jumps into the public Discord every once in a while with random information and then leaves for like a month. And it's like my favorite thing. Dusty is very similar, but. Yes. Come to our group Discord.
Our open Discord.
Our open Discord. We'll link it. We'll give you the link.
Yeah, it'll be in the show notes.
But at this point, you can actually just search Rainbow Dice Club on Discord servers because we've been boosted like 3 times now.
It's kind of weird. Yeah.
It's weird. It's freaking me out. At this point, we're at 96 people in the Discord server. Which I saw that today and I thought that was really cool.
So get in there. That's exciting. But you can find me on like social media, like, well, I guess Instagram and Twitter and TikTok. No, I don't know. Instagram and Twitter, I think. We're very professional at adventuring_Ari for Twitter and the Instagram.
Awesome. And Wayra?
Well, if you don't get me via summoning with the pentagram, you can totally find me at fake_shiny on Twitter or at fake shiny on most other social media platforms. I am not really active on my own social media, but you can definitely find me on our community Discord.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Come talk to us.
Yeah,
We're
say hi,
cool.
drop in.
I'm
watch
even
my
there,
business.
so you can also
And
talk to me
we
there.
we also
are
do.
there, yeah.
Heck yeah.
We
There's a lot of cool people
as
there.
the players will actually also run periodically one shots. Like I have one coming up that I'll be running in March.
I will be putting one up for March and for April.
Yeah, this
So
is actually-
if you want to play games
You're not
with
getting
us-
any from me until I finish my
I will
thesis.
literally just bombard you with memes and from TikTok.
I'm sorry,
so,
Nick.
like,
What were
it's
you
fine.
saying?
Yeah,
Yes,
this is a really great point that so in the last mailbag that we did, somebody was like, I really want to, find players and stuff. This is a great Discord to do it. I've never seen so many
Yeah.
active one shots and like parties being formed. It's great. It's really fun.
Yeah.
So
Thank
head
you.
over there. It's also in their link tree on the Rainbow Dice Club
Mhm.
Twitter, which is also a solid follow. Well, thank you
Thank
all
you
for
for
coming on
having us.
Tabletop. We'll have
Thanks
yeah,
for
we'll have
having
you
us.
back some other time. Anytime you guys
Awesome.
want to come on, the door is open.
Please.
You're gonna get sick of us.
Heck yeah.
Yay.
Awesome.
All right.
We're just gonna bust in like we brought nachos.
You
I
kick
got
the door
pizza.
down.
We have your we have your Riverside link now, so you know. We're like, oh,
You'll just get it
tonight.
Yeah, you'll get an email that's like there are 5 people in your Riverside. Were you expecting them?
Oh my
Amazing.
God.
Well, thank you all for coming on, and we'll see you next time.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks again to the Rainbow Dice Club for coming on the podcast. Man, they are so cool, funny, and smart, as you all saw from that interview. So give their actual play a follow. It is worth your time. Also, Tabletop is a proud member of the Helios Network, a network that makes shows for normal people by normal people, and we have so many cool shows for you to check out. There's stuff like Banter and Such if you're into movies. There's stuff like Wasted Truth if you're into like bar culture and just funny stories by funny people. And oh my gosh, there's so many others. If you're interested in actual play, then you could go on and get Swords and Unicorns from the Helios Network, which is a family-friendly actual play podcast as well. Check it out at theheliosnetwork.com or follow any of our shows on Twitter and Instagram. All right, everyone, we'll see you next week.